That was the moment I knew I'd lost my son. Not to death, not to distance, to something far more insidious. I sat in my own living room, the Thanksgiving turkey cooling on the table I'd set at 5 that morning, and watched my daughter-in-law lean back in her chair with that particular smile I'd learned to recognize over the past year. The one that said she'd already decided something, and my opinion was merely a formality she had to endure. "Eleanor," Lisa said, and I noticed she'd stopped calling me Mom about 6 months ago. "David and I have been talking. With the new baby coming, we really need more space." I folded my hands in my lap. Across the table, my son wouldn't meet my eyes. He was 42 years old, and he was studying his plate like a child caught in a lie he hadn't yet told. "Congratulations," I said, because I hadn't known about the pregnancy. "When are you due?" "April." Lisa's hand moved to her still flat stomach in that proprietary way pregnant women have. "Which is why we need to act quickly. This house is perfect for a growing family. 3 bedrooms, that big backyard, walking distance to the good elementary school. I'd lived in this house for 33 years. I'd brought David home from the hospital to this house. I'd nursed my dying mother in the downstairs bedroom when the stairs became too much for her. I'd planted every rosebush in that backyard Lisa was already mentally redesigning. It's a wonderful neighborhood for children," I agreed. "So you understand." Lisa smiled wider. "We'd like you to sign the house over to us now, before the baby comes. That way we can start renovations, really make it ours." The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked at David. He was staring at the gravy boat. "David," I said quietly. He cleared his throat. "Mom, you have to admit it's a big house for just you. And you're not getting any younger. Lisa's been researching some really nice assisted living facilities." "I'm 68, I interrupted. "I work 3 shifts a week at the hospital because I enjoy it, not because I need the money. I swim a mile every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Last month I hiked 6 miles with the hospital wellness group." "But for how much longer?" Lisa cut in. "Eleanor, let's be realistic. You're going to need care eventually. Wouldn't it be better to make these decisions now, while you still can? David deserves this house. After everything he's done for you." I felt something shift inside my chest. A door closing, perhaps, or opening. "What has David done for me?" I asked. My voice was calm. That's one thing you learn in 35 years of nursing. You can deliver devastating news in a voice that sounds like you're discussing the weather. Lisa blinked. "Well, he's your son. He checks in on you. He brought you soup when you had that cold last year." "Once," I said. "He brought me soup once. I'd had pneumonia. I'd texted him from the emergency room. He came by 3 days later with a can of Campbell's." "Mom," David started. I held up my hand. The same hand that had held him when he was born, that had checked his forehead for fevers, signed permission slips, waved him off to college. That had, just last Christmas, written him a check for $5,000 when his business hit a rough patch. "I think," I said slowly, "you should both leave now." Lisa laughed. Actually laughed. "Eleanor, don't be dramatic. We're just trying to help you plan ahead. You're going to end up in a facility anyway. Don't you want the kids to have a good home? Don't you want your grandson to grow up in this house with all these memories?" "My grandson," I said, "is 4 years old. He's been to this house exactly 7 times in his entire life. 3 of those were birthday parties for him, where I provided the cake, the decorations, and a $50 check. He doesn't know this house. He knows whatever story you'll tell him about the grandmother who gave it to him." I stood up. My legs felt steady. My hands didn't shake. "Please leave. You're being selfish," Lisa said, and now her voice had an edge. "This is family. David is your only child. These are your only grandchildren. You're really going to choose a house over them?" "I'm not choosing a house," I said. "I'm choosing not to be manipulated into giving away my security, my home, and my future, because you've decided I don't deserve them anymore." David finally looked at me. "Mom, please, we can talk about this." "We just did," I said. "I'd like you to leave now." They left. Lisa grabbed her purse and stormed out, calling over her shoulder that I'd regret this, that I was going to end up alone. David lingered in the doorway, looking like he wanted to say something. But he didn't. He just followed his wife to their car. I watched them drive away. Then I sat back down at the table, looked at the turkey I'd basted for 4 hours, and didn't cry. I'd cried enough tears in my life. I'd cried when my husband left me for his secretary 20 years ago. I'd cried at my mother's funeral. I'd cried the first time I realized my son called me only when he needed something. I was done crying. The next morning, I called my attorney. Margaret Chen had handled my divorce, my mother's estate, and my will. She was 70, sharp as a scalpel, and she didn't waste time on pleasantries. "What did they want?" she asked after I'd explained Thanksgiving. "The house. Now, before I'm even dead." "And you said?" "No." "Good." I heard papers rustling. "Eleanor, I'm going to be direct with you. What Lisa described, pressuring an elderly person to sign over property, is financial abuse. It's more common than people think. 1 in 10 older adults experiences some form of financial exploitation, usually by family members. "I'm not elderly," I said reflexively. "To them, you are. To them, you're old enough to be pushed around." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "What do you want to do?" "I want to make sure that if something happens to me, my house doesn't go to David." "Done. We'll set up an irrevocable trust. The house goes into the trust, with you as the lifetime beneficiary. You can live here, rent it out, sell it, whatever you want, but David can't inherit it. When you pass, it goes to the charity of your choice. How quickly can we do this?" "I'll have the papers ready by Monday." On Monday, I signed. On Tuesday, I went back to Margaret's office and changed my power of attorney from David to Margaret herself. On Wednesday, I updated my healthcare directive to remove David as my medical decision-maker. I named my colleague from the hospital, Susan Park, instead. We'd worked together for 12 years. I trusted her with my life. Literally. On Thursday, David called. I looked at his name on my phone screen and didn't answer. He called again that evening. Again the next morning. He left voicemails. The first one was defensive. The second was angry. The third was tearful. "Mom, please." Lisa's upset. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. We just wanted to help you plan. Please call me back. Please." I deleted each message after listening to it once. On Saturday, Lisa called from David's phone. I answered that one. "You can't ignore us forever," she said. "I'm not ignoring you," I said calmly. "I'm choosing not to engage with people who think I'm too old to deserve my own home." "That's not what I said." "That's exactly what you said. You told me I was going to end up in a facility anyway. You asked me to sign over my house so you could start renovations. You used my grandson as leverage." "Lisa, I've spent 35 years in healthcare. I know what elder abuse looks like. I've reported it. I've treated the results of it. I won't be a victim of it." Silence on the other end. "I've changed my will," I continued. "I've set up a trust. I've removed David as my power of attorney and healthcare proxy. My house will not be his, now or ever. When I die, everything I have is going to the nursing scholarship fund at my hospital, so there's nothing left to discuss. You're choosing strangers over your own family. I'm choosing people who see me as a person, not a resource to be liquidated." I hung up. Then I blocked both their numbers. The holidays passed. Christmas came and went. I worked my shifts at the hospital. I swam my laps. I had dinner with Susan and her husband. I volunteered at the hospital's free clinic on Tuesday evenings. I lived my life. In January, I joined a book club at the senior center. I'd always meant to, but somehow there was never time. David used to call on Tuesday evenings. I used to keep Thursday free in case he wanted to bring my grandson by. I used to spend Sunday mornings making extra food, hoping they'd stop in. Now I had time. The book club met every other Wednesday. There were 8 of us, all women over 60, all living alone, either by choice or circumstance. We read literary fiction one month, mystery the next. We met at different houses, drank wine, and talked about things that had nothing to do with our children. Mine wanted me to move in with them, said Patricia, who was 73 and still played tennis twice a week. Wanted to rent out my condo and keep the income. For my own good, they said. I'd be closer to the grandkids. In their finished basement, added Joan, 65, a retired teacher. They showed her the space. It was next to the water heater. We all laughed, but it wasn't really funny. My daughter wants me to sell my car, said Maria. Says I'm too old to drive. I've never had an accident. I've never even had a ticket. But she's decided I'm a danger. Control, I said quietly. It's about control. Once we're no longer useful to them, once we're not babysitting, or lending money, or providing emergency backup, we become problems to be managed. So what do? Asked Susan, the youngest at 62. We live, I said. We live exactly how we want. We make our own decisions. We protect our assets, and we don't apologize for it. In February, I started volunteering at the animal shelter. I'd always loved dogs, but my husband had been allergic, and then, after the divorce, I was working too much. Now I spent Saturday mornings socializing the rescue dogs, getting them ready for adoption. In March, David showed up at my house. I saw his car through the window and almost didn't answer the door. But I did, because I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I'd simply chosen not to engage in it. He looked terrible, thinner, older. There were shadows under his eyes. Mom, he said. David, can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped back. He came into the living room, the room where, 4 months ago, his wife had told me to sign over my home, and stood there awkwardly. Lisa left me, he said finally. I waited. She found out about the trust, about the will. She said if there was no inheritance, there was no point. She took our son and moved back to her mother's place. His voice cracked. She's filing for divorce. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said. And I was. Not sorry that Lisa had left. I'd seen that coming the moment I signed those papers. But sorry that my son was in pain. That's what mothers do. We hurt when our children hurt, even when they've hurt us first. I didn't know, David said. I didn't know she was like that. I thought she loved me. She loved what she thought you'd inherit. He flinched. I know that now. He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the boy he'd been. The one who'd brought me dandelions from the yard. The one who'd cried on his first day of kindergarten. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. I should have told her no. She had all these plans, and she made it sound so reasonable, and I wanted her to be happy, at my expense. Yes, he said it quietly. At your expense. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd want to help us. I've helped you your whole life, I said. I raised you alone after your father left. I paid for your college. I gave you money for your business. I babysat so you could have date nights. I hosted holidays. I showed up, David, every single time. But showing up isn't the same as giving up everything I have. I know. Do you? I kept my voice gentle, but firm. Because for a while there, you seemed to think that being your mother meant I owed you my house, my security, my future. He was crying now, silently, tears running down his face. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Can you forgive me? I looked at my son, and I felt something that wasn't quite love and wasn't quite indifference. It was somewhere in between, a distant fondness for who he'd been, and a clear-eyed acknowledgement of who he was now. I don't know, I said honestly. Forgiveness isn't something I owe you, David. It's not a given. You and Lisa asked me to sign away my home. You suggested I go to a facility. You used your son, my grandson, as emotional leverage. Those aren't small things. Those are betrayals. I know. And now Lisa's gone, and you're here. But David, I need to know something. Are you here because you genuinely understand what you did wrong? Or are you here because your life fell apart, and I'm the backup plan?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know." "Then I think you should go," I said. "I think you should take some time and figure out who you are without someone telling you what to want. And maybe, in a year or two, we can talk again. But right now, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to comfort you for the consequences of your own choices." He nodded, wiped his face. "Can I still call you? Sometimes?" "You can," I said. "But David, I'm not who I was. I'm not waiting by the phone anymore. I'm not keeping my schedule open just in case. I have a life now, a full life, with people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. I understand." He moved toward the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't give us the house. I'm glad you protected yourself. Someone needed to." After he left, I sat in my kitchen and looked out at the backyard. The roses were starting to bud. In a few weeks, they'd bloom pink and white and yellow, the colors my mother had loved. My phone buzzed. The book club group chat. "Patricia, wine Wednesday this week? My place? Joan. I'll bring cheese. Maria. I'll bring the good crackers. Eleanor, you're still coming, right?" I typed back. "Wouldn't miss it." That evening, I made dinner for one. A small piece of salmon, roasted vegetables, a glass of wine. I ate at the kitchen table, the same table where, 4 months ago, I'd served a Thanksgiving meal to people who saw me as an obstacle. Now I ate alone. But I wasn't lonely. There's a difference, I've learned. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing your own company because it's better than the alternative. I chose solitude over depletion, boundaries over obligation, myself over people who only wanted what I had. On Sundays, I started hosting small dinners. Susan and her husband, Patricia from book club, sometimes Maria and her sister. We'd eat and laugh and talk about books and politics and the gardens we were planning for spring. No one asked me for money. No one suggested I was too old to make decisions. No one treated me like a resource to be managed. They treated me like a friend. In April, Lisa had her baby. I found out from a mutual acquaintance at the hospital. A girl, 7 pounds, 8 ounces. They named her Emma. I didn't call. I didn't send a gift. I felt a small pang. Of course I did. She was my granddaughter. But I'd learned something important over the past few months. Biology doesn't create obligation. Love does. Respect does. Mutual care does. And I'd have loved that little girl. I'd have been there for every birthday, every recital, every milestone. But her mother had made it clear that my presence was conditional on my compliance, and I don't negotiate with people who see me as a transaction. In May, I turned 69. I didn't have a party. I took myself to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. I ordered the expensive wine. I had the lobster. I left a generous tip. I used my own money, earned from decades of work, saved with care, protected with boundaries, and I enjoyed every single bite. Walking back to my car, I passed a young mother struggling with a stroller and 2 shopping bags. I stopped and asked if she needed help. She looked relieved. We got everything loaded into her car. She thanked me profusely. "You're a lifesaver," she said. "I don't know what I'd do without kind strangers." "I'm happy to help," I said. And I meant it. I like helping people. I always have. It's why I became a nurse. It's why I volunteer at the shelter. It's why I raised my son the best way I knew how. But there's a difference between helping and being used, between generosity and exploitation, between love and leverage. I've learned to tell the difference. Now, when I look back at that Thanksgiving dinner, I don't feel angry. I don't even feel particularly sad. I feel something closer to relief, because that was the moment I stopped waiting for my son to become the person I'd hoped he'd be. That was the moment I stopped measuring my worth by how much I could give away. That was the moment I chose myself. And here's what I know now. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. It's recognizing that you deserve the same care, the same respect, the same protection you've spent your life giving to others. My house is still mine. My money is still mine. My future is still mine. And when I die many years from now, I hope everything I've worked for will fund nursing scholarships. It will help young people who want to care for others the way I did. People who chose compassion as a career, not as a transaction. David calls sometimes, once a month, maybe. We talk about surface things, the weather, his job. Never Lisa, never the house. There's a distance between us now that wasn't there before. Or maybe it was always there, and I was just too busy trying to bridge it to notice. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. I don't know if I want to be, and I've made peace with that, because I've learned that you can love someone and still protect yourself from them. You can wish them well and still keep your distance. You can be someone's mother and still refuse to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. I'm 69 years old. I swim my laps. I work my shifts. I volunteer at the shelter. I host dinners for friends who value me. I read good books and drink good wine and sleep soundly in my own house, in my own bed, with my own conscience clear. I don't need anyone's permission to have a full life. I don't need anyone's approval to make my own choices, and I certainly don't need anyone's validation to know my worth. I know my worth. I set the price, and I'm no longer on sale. That's the story I wanted to tell you today. Not because it's extraordinary. I suspect many of you have similar stories, or know someone who does, but because sometimes we need to hear that it's okay to draw the line. It's okay to say no. It's okay to choose yourself, even when people call it selfish. Especially when people call it selfish. If there's someone in your life pressuring you to give up your home, your savings, your security, someone who uses guilt or family obligation as leverage, I want you to know this. You don't owe them your future. You don't owe them your peace. You don't owe them anything that would leave you vulnerable or dependent. Get a good attorney. Set up a trust. Change your power of attorney if you need to. Protect what's yours, because once it's gone, you can't get it back. And the people who truly love you won't ask you to give it up in the first place. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the strongest thing you can choose. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone who needs to hear it.